What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Keegan and Company podcast, where it is all around the company we keep. This podcast is powered by Famous Nutrition. Shop online at famousnutrition.com and use TRY30 for 30% off to feel famously good today. Enjoy the episode. Dom Di Tommaso, how are you, brother?
Yeah, mate, fantastic. Having a good time.
Did I get that right?
Di Tommaso, yes,
Di Tommaso.
that is correct. Yeah,
I imagine you growing up, you would have got all the different variations, hey?
Well, yeah, when I was doing figure skating, they'd be like, please welcome to the ice, Dominic Di Tommaso. Di Tommaso.
Yeah.
And often people spell it with two S's instead of two M's, putting the word arse in my last name, which is not the case. It is Tom Masso, not Tom Arsehole.
Yeah. Well, man, hey, thanks so much for coming on today, man.
No, you're very welcome.
It's I know you've had a busy couple days with the grand final. You just came off the back of the wedding. Mm-hmm. We had the Red Bull event where we first met. So, man, I'm pumped to have you on, bro.
Yeah, I love that we met at 3 days ago and had this instant bond, and you're like, you want to come in and have a chat? So, yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Well, man, it was cool because like at the Red Bull Summit, I was the late call up. I got a call from Sarah. One of the boys dropped out, and she's just the day before. She's like, "Do you want to come in?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to go down to Canberra Threadbow anyway to pick up my car."
Ah, sick.
And I was the one that just didn't have any clothes or warm weather gear.
Yeah. Going in, Sarah was like, there was one of the guys didn't bring any warm weather gear at all, so make sure you bring extra layers. I was in a tracksuit the whole time.
Yeah, so we're in the snow. I didn't bring a jumper. But anyway, we rolled in, and I was your workshop was at the back end of the 3 days. In the morning we'd just done like a trail run into a high rocks workout and into your free running parkour session. But even before that, we kind of did like a little Q&A leading into the workshop about a bit about your career, the difference between creator and athlete, and it just actually got me starting to think like, wow, this would actually be such an awesome conversation coming from a podcasting lens, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much nuance and like depth and game data to any professional sport, and I think parkour is really unique in the sense that it doesn't have a traditional layout or like a format that other people are used to or attuned to. There's not belts or levels or a real grading system. There's not, teams that you can buy the jerseys of in the street culture directly or anything like that. Yeah. So it is really unfounded in many ways, but it's also just like any other sport in so many ways as well. It has the same pathway, same messaging, same lessons about overcoming fear or, building up a strong mindset as well as physicality.
Yeah, some themes that I'm like definitely keen to flesh out today. And because to be honest, it's such a, for me, it's such a left field sport. Like it's typically when I grow up thinking like, oh, like what do you want to do for a living? Parkour didn't come into my mind. Maybe just because I was a bigger boy, but I would love to go back and what it looked like for you growing up. Like what was the space when you were in those really informative years of what do I actually want to do? How did parkour make its way into your life?
Well, it's quite interesting because my family is very, very sporty, and I always grew up heavily involved in some sort of sport, whether it was gymnastics, cross-country running, athletics. Ice skating was the main thing that my family did. And then through that, I was going to a performing arts high school here in Sydney, and I saw it in parkour on YouTube and was like, I want to do that. That looks awesome. Like I was always drawn to action movies in the way that the chase scenes and the feeling that I would get watching them was excitement and wanting to I'd be on the train home swinging around the poles of the train and stuff like that. And so it was like an answer of, oh, you can do this action film ninja style stuff without having any of the, I guess, barriers or rules and strictness of figure skating, which I was heavily involved in at the time. So that instantly drew me to the sport, and I went out in that lunch break at school and tried it, like just jumping over little tables and just got one of my mates and was like, check this out, we should do it. And I think because I was already in like an athletic realm, it gave me a good understanding, one, of how to kind of go about training and, you know, break it down. But two, also just a good advantage being 15 years old and already quite highly physically trained, then you can apply that to parkour a lot easier than coming in from nothing.
Do you think the gymnastics and figure skating helped you propel like your performance even more so in parkour?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, there was many things both in, you know, the flipping discipline or just understanding what it took to be a high level athlete, like how much training was involved in that. And also, like, I fell over on the ice so much because I was also not a very consistent figure skater. As good as I can get to in high levels, I also have a lot of tumbles along the way. And that's been the same with parkour. And I think learning from an early age how to fall over, like in ice skating, before I even remember, they taught me how to fall over safely so that I didn't cut my own fingers off with the ice skating blades and that sort of thing. That's like something that's implemented into the sport as a whole across the entire like globe of ice skating, right? So then taking that skill, which is like falling on wet concrete, and applying it to the same like hardness of surface, but having to figure out how to like roll and disperse that impact in a different way instead of just sliding was like, it translated really, really well.
Well, man, even the concept of like learning how to fall, like that's like us having the conversation now, probably pretty normal because this is your job. Like you have to know how to fall. But when we came in and when we did the workshop, a big part of it is like, okay, guys, like first out of the gate, like I'm just gonna see how you fall. Like I'm gonna teach you like how to fall. And I was like, I thought we were just gonna be like jumping around and shit.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that?
The main thing I think with parkour is it's about learning to use your body safely and then interacting with the floor, walls, different obstacles. And so when I start doing a parkour session with somebody, I want them to learn the safety mechanisms to save themselves before we approach anything that's going to be remotely dangerous for their body. So we're building the skill from the ground up of building like the knowledge and safety tools around the skills and then applying the skills. So like for the first 20 minutes of parkour, I can see some of the boys cheesing pretty hard because we were rolling on the floor, which was covered in kangaroo shit. Yeah. We were
in the back country of Perisher, just by the way, just to give context.
Of all places. And then we were crawling on all fours as well in this kangaroo shit, and then jumping off knee high and rolling, and all the boys were like, okay, like I guess this is parkour. But what I wanted to do was, one, get everyone to loosen up. And I think a lot of the exercise types that we do with racing, you coming from rugby, they are very serious a lot of the time, and they are very, very focused. Where with parkour, it's a lot more playful, it's a lot more experimental, and you can have a lot more fun while still getting a very good workout in. In that way, it's a bit more creative. So I wanted everyone to like loosen up and let go of a bit of inhibition and just like let's have some fun with this. So doing, I guess, more basic awkward stuff together does usually create this like bond of everyone's like feeling that same you know, a discomfort of doing something silly looking in front of people that they want to be perceived as cool as. So once we got out of that and we started to do a few more jumps and we started to race, like balance exercises and that sort of thing, I think everyone started to really get into it. And then it became like this really, really fun session where probably not a lot of people noticed that they were doing quite a lot of jumping and quite a lot of like plyometric exercise. But that's kind of the way that it tends to unfold.
It's so interesting because even when we were having dinner that night, we were doing our peak and pit, so like highlight and low light of the day. And, you know, 5 out of 7 guys said that parkour exercise was their favorite of the whole day, learning how to backflip.
That was really nice. I feel like some of them were probably saying it because I was sitting there. It's like, that guy's his stuff was my favorite. The other guy's stuff, terrible.
And he wasn't even in the room.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. But like that thing of like getting out of our comfort zone, I think was such a really cool part of it because, it was a little bit awkward. You know, you're jumping off a knee height wall to start with, and then that there was one of the exercises where we had to race up a set of stairs, but you could only stand on the corner of the step, like the little wooden part of the step, and not the gravel.
Yeah, so the stairs had like a framing to it. There was a wooden framing, and the gravel was just a little bit lower. And so we balanced our whole way up the steps, which were quite awkward and changing in distance. So you had to really focus on the balancing on the wood. And I think that exercise in itself is great for like proprioception, balance, moving at speed, like the awareness. You know, if you're doing something like trail running, that little exercise can translate really well because you're working on precise foot placement and that sort of thing. So it has more of a widespread effect than just doing parkour. And then once the boys got into it and were racing, you put any competitive athletes up against each other, especially on something that's not high stakes, that's really like, you know, just a fun experiment kind of thing. And you ended up winning that anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you, bro. Very competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I got, 5'4", and you got 5'6'8".
I think well, we don't need to pump me up anymore.
Mate, Keegan's the next big parkour sensation coming out of Australia.
But I think the thing that I was keen to like flesh out was like that ability of like, we were a little bit awkward at falling at the start, and we were a little bit out of our comfort zone. And then the back end of the session, you know, everyone's cheering. Like when we were doing the backflips, every boys are like just jumping around and slapping each other, and like the community and the team building part of that was just so awesome. Do you do that with other environments or even in your own team environments? Like, is there that kind of team building culture in there? Because I know parkour is a very individual sport. Does it have that team component to it?
It absolutely does. I feel like instead of seeing it as individual teams, people that do parkour see us as all one big team or one big community. And that's the thing that kept me in the sport for such a long time, is the people involved in it. It's very supportive. Even in competition settings and circumstances, there's still every other athlete cheering for every other athlete on the course. And yeah, we as a community try to be very inclusive. There's no stereotype of who should be doing parkour, because it's an individual journey about learning to use your body. And so we like to try and, especially myself, I really like to try and celebrate everyone's individual journey. Be that you doing a 3-foot distance precision across a gutter for the first time and overcoming the fear of doing that, or doing a roof gap that's 20 foot and horrendously scary, but you conquer that fear and you overcome that mental barrier. That process is different for everyone. And I think in parkour, we're in a unique position where that can be celebrated each step of those journeys along the way. And when you go to a parkour event or a parkour jam overseas, that's probably the biggest takeaway that you see, is that everybody's there trying to share the knowledge and the joy of the movement they're doing. And, you know, that expertise isn't held, or no one's clutching their pearls about their move or their movement, or, you know, copying each other or something like that. It's a very shared process. Was
it always like that? Because I want to zoom in on that time where you were, you know, coming up in the sport. I know that you were a garbage man for a number of years while you were balancing the professional parkour space and having to live. What was it like when you first sort of came into that scene when you were 15, maybe to 18, 20? What did that look like for you? First of all, like from a juggling a work-life training balance, but then also coming into a sport that probably might not have been as celebrated as it is today.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, it was still very early days. I started before the famous Casino Royale 007 chase scene that was the big opening scene. That featured one of the creators of parkour, and it very much put the spotlight on the sport for a little while there. But when I first started, I didn't really know anyone else that was doing it. And for the first year and a half, I was just collecting kids from the ice rink and kids from my street being like, yo, let's go try backflips. I taught all of my friends backflips, and we had a little crew called Roof to Roof. But then, as you know, they kind of grew out of the sport in their own different ways, and I found the Sydney parkour community. So I was going to the gymnastics centre in Olympic Park. Another person who did parkour was there. They were like, you should come to our regular classes, Sunday sessions, and that sort of thing. So I jumped in on with that. I remember I remember specifically, and this is one of these things about the sport that I find really interesting, because I was quite an egotistical little teenager, and I was pretty good at parkour straight away. So I came in wearing my like Nike hoodie vest, my little wrist like supports, and my
Can we get a photo of that?
yeah, I think I might have one back in the day, but yeah, cargo shorts, not at all the parkour look, very much like early gym bro look, but doing parkour, like it was that 90s look. And I remember going up to one of the guys, because I was kind of late, and going, "Oh, where's the advanced class?" And the guy's like, "There's no advanced class. If you've been here before, you go over there. If it's your first time, you go there." Like, just giving it that like humility straight away, where it's like, look, doesn't matter how good you are at this shit. Like, we have, this side and this side, and we all just do it together. There's no like better than or worse than. And that was a really interesting way to come into the scene for me, as someone who I think was a little full of themselves at the time. And I think the sport has inherently taught me a lot more humility and a lot more humbleness, because when you unquestionably go up against failure, if I try a jump and I fail it, I can't blame like, oh, there was a bird in the sky or there was something else going on. I have to really take accountability for that action. And so that practice in itself makes you more comfortable with accepting failure and accepting responsibility, and that can permeate into like your wider reasonings with bigger life moves and that sort of thing.
That's exactly where my head went. I was like, imagine, even coming into this conversation today, I was like, you would be met with failure probably more often than not, right?
Yeah.
And then I think, well, I wonder how that applies to everyday life.
Well, I feel like I don't get stressed in high pressure situations due to having practiced it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm good at being stressed by any means. I actually think I'm quite bad at when the stress hits like that. It can be overwhelming. Yeah. But dealing with a stressful situation is something that you're generally putting yourself in parkour, because the game, as it were, is to find something that challenges you. And usually that's a little bit scary because it's on the physical cusp of what you can do, or there's an element of risk, an element of consequence. If you elevate it to a head height or above, suddenly a fall is a lot more drastic than it would be if you were just practicing on ground level. And so that skill of going into that risky situation and, putting yourself in something uncomfortable and then achieving that safely, being in control and being able to master the challenge, jump thing that you've set for yourself, gives you this internal confidence, an internal stepping stone of gratification that you're like, okay, I'm empowered by that action. And then you can see I feel like a lot of young athletes who come into the sport maybe a little bit more awkward or introverted or quiet, who end up being these very self-confident, self-driven young adults who are able to really back themselves in the journeys they want to take. I see a lot of athletes who don't necessarily stay with the sport, but from my external looking in, they find success in the other endeavors that they take from, having practiced the sport and learned these lessons about how to operate, how to deal with failure, how to progress and overcome obstacles that may come up.
Where does your mind go when you've tried, imagine like a trick or a jump or something a few times, you can't quite get there? Where, like, how, because I'm trying to think practically how I can take that into my everyday life. Like, where does your mindset go? Like, I haven't got this. How do I overcome this little mental block or this little barrier?
I guess there's a few different ways to approach it. There's no one right answer, right? Because depending on the challenge that I'm facing, I need to be versatile. If it's simply a fact that I'm too fatigued or not strong enough on the day, then I may need to have the presence of mind to step away from the challenge and go, okay, today is not the day for this specific thing. And then either go away and train more strength or practice the skill more in a different location, and then bring myself back, and then on a day where I'm feeling fresh, prepare for it by resting before and that sort of thing. So having the presence of mind to step away and say, not today, and reapproach the situation with all the practice, all of the intelligence that you've built around the situation previously, banking it, stepping away and coming back to it. But then sometimes as well, when it's, say, I guess, a more mental-based or fear-based challenge, I like to do as much preparation as I can, be that replication practice jumps, making sure that if it's a big impact, my legs are ready to take impact that day. Everything feels good physically. But then when you get to that starting point, the start line, the top of the takeoff, whatever it is in your sport or whatever situation you're in, I feel like you need to be comfortable trusting the 5% leap that you're going to be taking. That there is a little bit of unknown when you're taking any sort of progression marker forwards. If you look at history, you know, every time that somewhere has been found or new land has been, you know, stepped upon, like Antarctica, when they go into the outreaches of that sort of thing, it's an unknown, and they're having to take, you know, they can do as much research and as much data beforehand, but there is that little bit of the unknown that you have to be comfortable in. And the only way that I see to be comfortable in what I would call that risk assessment and risk taking, and it doesn't have to be to a high degree of risk taking, but it's a practice in a skill itself. Just like a climb up the wall that we did in the course, where you hang on the edge of a wall and you pull your body weight up and over. Once you practice a skill a few times, you got much better at it than the first initial hang where it was quite difficult to get up. Same with fear. If you deal with fear on a regular basis and practice it like a skill, you know, I'm going to logically assess the situation. I'm going to approach it as safely as I can. I'm going to achieve success with it. Or if I don't achieve success, I'm going to take away the information notes that I've learned from failure to my future attempts at success. Then you can really start to encapsulate like a process around the skill of fear and seeing it not as this intangible, emotional, undeveloped thing that just happens to you and just is upon you. It's like anything else. It takes practice. Of course, if you're scared, that's normal, and that is something that does happen, but you can get better at it like anything else.
I remember you used an analogy where it's like you said something about how you've got your tent, and then any time that you want to push out, it's kind of like, what did you say? You kind of like you push your tent out a little bit more? Yeah,
so imagine that you're sitting inside your tent, and the inside of your tent is all the skill that you possess. And every time that you're going out training or practicing the skill to try and build the tent, you're only pushing you're lifting up the side of the peg, and you're only pushing it out by 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter each time with each peg on the side. But if you do that every day for a long enough period of time, suddenly you have a 5 meter tent with all this skill and data to pull from and all this space of knowledge that you've acquired over a learned, built up period of time, instead of just trying to rip the tent out 5 meters on the first day, the whole thing busts open, and then you've got no cover.
Yeah, it reminds me, we did a podcast with Mark Matthews, another Red Bull athlete, big wave surfer, and he was telling, well, same conversation, talking about overcoming fear, because I was like, we constantly get put in this place where we might have a little setback where we get injured or we had a really gnarly fall, and we're like, well, how do I get back to that? And he used the analogy of his young daughters. They're into skating, and they go and like his younger daughter can drop in on like a vert ramp, and she's like 6 years old or something crazy.
It's
like
so
that.
High up.
It's so high up, and I was like, well, how do you do that? It was like, and he said, well, think about it. Like, she didn't just jump into that vert ramp straight away. It's like she was dropping in on a smaller ramp with her hands being held by two of like the world's best, you know, like skateboarders, right? And so she was doing that for a whole year leading in, like pushing that 10 peg out a little millimeter by millimeter, and to the point now where she can fully drop in. And so you think about that from pushing the pole out of your 10 or your skills, I'm like, that will make so much sense. And then also the ability to be able to like have really good people around you as well. Like his young daughters have like some of the best skateboarder instructors and coaches like in Australia, potentially the world. So it's like that ability of like surrounding yourself with good crew as well. And imagine it'd probably be very similar for you. How did your skill progression go when you were that garbage man, being then jumping into the gym and working around with, I guess, like more high level parkour athletes? Like, did that help you propel your skills further?
Yeah, I would say when I was working as a garbage man, I was living with my best friend, and him and I were jumping every single afternoon. One of the reasons I chose that career over a 9-to-5 desk job or something that was more time taxing was that I could get the job done earlier. So you were paid till 1 every day, but if you finished at 9:30, you go home at 9:30. So we would physically work very hard to smash through the run, which made me very resilient, because doing 5 days of 5 to 15 kilometers of running, lifting 1,000 bins. It just beefs you up. We were talking about this is the old off season for a professional football player was that. So I would use that to, make an income, live out of home, have a stable job, and then train in the afternoons. And because I was living with another person who was doing the exact same thing, Marks and I would just go super, super hard on the training and try and make something of the parkour in the background there. That was kind of our always overarching goal.
But the neighbours like, these garbage men are jacked.
Yeah, I mean,
this garbage men are fit.
There was news articles about Marks, the flipping garbage man, who was because he would run down the street and do flips over the bins and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So it was really good in that sense. But one thing it was limiting in is that the physical capacity that we were putting into work every day meant that we were getting stronger, but it limited the energy we had to put towards training. And then, as you said, as soon as I did become a professional athlete and started traveling to these international events, not only was I able to allocate that time and energy and physicality towards more intense training and more hours on the court per se, but I was meeting experts in the field, and that does make a huge difference. I think that there is an element you do need to be willing to learn. If you're going into this and thinking I'm already sick or I'm adding this value, I've seen a few athletes who come in like that and they don't really take away much, or they don't really stay in the sport for too long because their interests aren't in the overall progression of the sport and themselves and the multiple tiers of athlete that they could become. And I think that's a really important part, is going to the experts in each individual field, whether that be on the bars or at flips or at certain tricks or at large strong parkour movements, 180s, that sort of thing. You need to go to the experts, be humble enough to listen and learn, and then if you are capable enough, you'll all be able to train together and elevate that skill to heights that potentially the sport's never seen before. Yeah,
that's interesting. I love that. I love that humility bit. I spoke to Jen in the lead up to this conversation just to get a bit of background, and one of the main feedback that I got from her, amongst a few other people, was just you're so humble. And I just don't think I am. Yeah. It's so funny.
But my whole childhood, I was brought up told I was so annoying and arrogant, and then as an adult, people are like, you're so humble. I'm like, but am I? In parkour, people think I've got a big ego, but
but it's interesting because I
appreciate it. I do. I'm very grateful.
From all
makes me laugh.
But even from all the 3 or 4 days that I've known you, but you come into the Red Bull event, you're very easygoing. I imagine it could be the opposite, right? With someone with an incredible social media presence, the guy in parkour. I imagine that's probably pretty easy to fall into the other camp. So I'm just trying to think. I love the fact that you come in, you got time for everyone. You've got time to give. I know you've had a busy couple of days, but just to roll in, give us time to have this conversation. I think that's really cool. The other part of the bit, talking to Jen, was around that playful aspect. You touched on it and you alluded to it beforehand, and you even mentioned in the camp, when I think I asked you a question around I've seen so many athletes coming in and out of their sport, right? They've, might have been in a NRL, AFL, Olympic space for 10, 15 years. Some guys burn out. Some guys just get over it. They fall out of love with it. And I remember asking you, I was like, well, how do you stay in love with something? Because the way you were talking about parkour, you were frothing. You just you had so much energy and excitement the way you talk about it. I was like, well, how do you stay in love with that for so long? And a big part of it was that playful and it's fun.
Well, yeah, I think to go way back actually to the lessons I learned from figure skating that did translate into parkour is when I was competing, my mother was very aware of not being a stage mum or over enveloped in us achieving something for her. So she would always tell us before the competition, go out there and have fun. First and foremost, have fun. Wherever you place doesn't matter. Yeah. Right? I want you to go out and have a good time. And so that overarching message of doing it because I want to do it and because it's a good time and it should be an enjoyable process has really translated into parkour. And especially because the community is about that kind of enjoyment through the sport, that's been able to keep my love for the sport very intense the whole time. I think as well, as I was saying before, it's not very competitive. Even though we do have competitions, there's not this mindset of like I have to achieve more than this person, or it's a very self-driven thing. So in that sense, then there's not as much opportunity for tearing down of others or others to tear you down, which does happen in traditional sports. I found in figure skating it was very catty. It was very like, you know, my big sister was very, very high level at it. She went to the world championships and that sort of thing. And when you get to that stage, it gets ickily political. It's not very nice. So seeing that there could be a sport where people were achieving at a high level and also treating each other with the respect and support at that high level was something that once I saw in parkour I really wanted to embellish in my own life. And I think also, you know, creates happiness. It creates it. Making things fun is as good a reason to do anything as anything else. I think, you know, we intrinsically try to put purpose or like meaning or depth into what we're doing. And it's like, if you just don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And if you want to do it, that's a good enough reason for you to do it.
Why do we overcomplicate it?
Yeah. Why does it have to be more?
Yeah. But that's not. But that is not consistent with a lot of really high level athletes, like the guys and girls who are at the peak of their sport. You don't really see that playfulness consistent across all of them. Usually, they're typically like super headstrong. Like you know, I think like Kelly Slater. You know, I think some of the best athletes in like the NRL space and AFL space. They're so just driven, and I wonder if that's the environment that they have to play in, whereas parkour, it can be very free and fluid versus a team environment where it's very much like where training starts at 6 a.m. and you got to be there and it's very regimented, you know?
Yes, and there is something to be said that the drive is needed to be there if you want to be great at your sport. Like, I posted the hardest jumps I could post every single day on social media for 8 years. I feel like that's a clear indicator of the drive. But yeah, as you said, there isn't this best or winner or season or training or coaches that's regimenting things that is making it, I guess, a little bit less free and a little bit less personal, everything that you're doing in that sense, I guess, unless you're someone who does really almost like that military discipline or like really, really, really enjoy the whole process. It is harder to maintain your love with the sport. Whereas, you know, most parkour athletes that are pros, they get up at 10 a.m., have a coffee, look at the weather, be like, text some friends, where do you want to go? 2 p.m., they'll meet up with their friends, most 2:30, 2:45. You know, like if they say 2, a parkour person's going to be there 2:30, 2:45.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, they'll just train until dark and then sometimes into dark. And it's just like, it's very like skateboarding in its day-to-day practice. You go to a spot that's got good, you know, walls, obstacles, different variety of things. And you kind of just jam. You practice the skills. You set little challenges between yourselves. Sometimes you might have like an elevated, like very intense challenge that you're after. Or, you know, there was seasons where I would go out with I guess, developed mindset of trying to hunt for really big challenges. And that's when you're in like the high end, top end drive that you're talking about for the sport, is that you're almost just like obsessing over the next jump that you're going to do every single time and every single day. But I think that can only sustain for a short, well, not a short period of time, but an extended period of time. It can't be consistent throughout your whole career for any sport. And there has been a lot of coming to terms with recognizing that and realizing that just because I can't go as hard and on the hammer every single day doesn't mean that there's not enjoyment or value or even like still progression to be made with the sport. I think a lot of people, as soon as they get out of their peak intensity, they think that that's the peak of their career or that that's the top of the mountain, whereas I just don't believe that. I think, especially with something like parkour, it's very open-ended, and that sort of ambiguity in constantly progressing in a direction but having no finish line, I think that actually is a great metaphor for the journey of life, right? Because what we're all trying to progress, and it's a very human thing to want more, to want the next thing. But we like to put these, like, I guess, goalposts up for ourselves and these markers, and then when you achieve those markers, you kind of sometimes get lost. Like, what do you do next? So I think having an understanding of fundamentally wanting to progress and getting the gratification of achieving those things, but then not having to be stuck to just one direction, one dream, one goal is a nice way to kind of maintain peace.
Well, it's kind of like where you are now, right? With having like both ankles like operated on, and you obviously you just can't be so, out doing what you were doing 100 miles an hour, right? Like we were in London earlier this year and we did a podcast with Mary Fowler, a professional soccer player, Matilda's plays for Man City now. She just did her ACL, so peak of her career. So we lined up the podcast, and then literally like a week before we were going to film, she called me. She's like, "Keegs, I've just done my ACL.
Oh, no.
I'm not up for doing a podcast." And I was like, "This is like," and Mary's like, obviously a big deal and a lovely girl. I was like, "Yeah, that's fine, but I think it would be really cool to see just where your headspace is at the moment." We did a path in Nathan Cleary a little bit earlier, and so she liked the episodes, she liked the podcast, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not sure." And then she messaged me after. She's like, "Fuck it, like let's just do it." And the beautiful part about that episode was that she was right in it. Like she rolled up in a knee brace. She was at 4 or 5 days post surgery, fresh. But her perspective and her ability to be able to positively reframe a really gnarly situation. Like she's in the peak of her career. ACL's a 9 to 12 month injury, and she's like, "Well, actually, like." I really love sport and I really love what I'm doing, and it really sucks that I've just done my ACL, but I can actually really focus on things that I really like to do. Like I've wanting to do this mentoring thing. I've wanted to launch this project with helping kids and bullying and I have actually a lot more passions outside of my sport. And so this has actually given me the time to pursue those things. And the way she positively reframed it, I was like, that is amazing. And it's that idea of what you mentioned about that continual forward motion and finding the good in a really gnarly situation.
Yeah, I think that sounds like she's used her direction and just life circumstance in a really emotionally mature way where, like, life is unpredictable, right? Even if you're putting yourself in a risky situation and like, doing it regularly with something like high level sports, still life has accidents and is unpredictable in that way, and being able to pivot emotionally like that, it sounds like she's in a really healthy space with it, and that can just be from nurture and upbringing, but I think also sports psychology is a huge part of that, especially with athletes who are living such an individual experience with their sport. We all go through very similar things, but I think at the high intensities, like in her situation, you're going through something that's almost completely individual. And so being able to have these mental, I guess, practices, guidelines in place that aren't necessarily strict, but framework, can really be beneficial in that sense.
Was there any times in your, and it doesn't even have to be parkour, but in life, was there any times that you're in a spot, maybe a dark spot, where you didn't think you were able to get through, but then you still were able to?
Yeah, I think for me that was really early on in, because as I said, we were doing figure skating from a very early age. I was on ice skates since I was 3. And by the age of 9, I was the Australian champion for the primary level of figure skating. So my family was like really into it. We were doing it 6 days a week. Unfortunately, my parents split up when I was 13. And at that stage, I feel like I was a little bit losing love for the sport. There was a lot of stuff happening at home. I couldn't find that groove that I really found through like 8, 9, 10, and 11 that was giving me that competitive edge. Like, well, I'd be out on the ice and I'd be training and everything would be like tunnel vision on being in training. And then I found myself getting a little more social, not paying as much attention at training, maybe, being a little bit less disciplined with how I was on the ice. And I couldn't get that back. And I was very fortunate that we did a state championship course with a sports psychologist, Andrea First. And she worked with me continually after that for a period of like 6 months to a year, I think, maybe more. And at that time, she identified that I was kind of on the verge or had very close proximity to depression. And that seemingly very happy-go-lucky on the outside, but was running very much on like adrenal purposes. And I couldn't even really tell you specifically what they were, even if I did remember. But the practices that we kind of instilled through goal setting, achieving, and acceptance of self and those sorts of things, I think were very pivotal in me becoming much more emotionally mature into my teenage years. And as an adult, I find that my temperament and my understanding of my own emotions is quite high comparatively to some of my peers, which I feel very fortunate for. But, I only really cry at film and TV. Yeah. Like How I Met Your Mother will make me cry, but then real life situations, I'm like, you know how to deal with this. You have put the mental practices in place.
But that's interesting, because I always look at like those really hard things that we go through, like whether it's those feelings of like being in a dark spot yourself, whether it's injury, whether it's losing a loved one. And while it's so hard in that moment, there is typically always good that comes from it. So, you talked about being in like that really hard place. The ability now where you're like, oh, I'm actually really self-assured. I actually have that, maturity to get through other things that life throws at you. It seems like such a positive, right?
Yeah. I try to be as aware about my like emotionality and situational like adaptiveness as much as possible. But obviously everyone's not perfect in that sense. But I do feel very grateful. I think that when I think about the good things that I do have in that space, I do credit them to the practices I learned through sports psychology, and also being, national level athlete through my formative years. And then even when I started parkour, the goal for me was always to find a way to make it a living. When I started, there wasn't as many clear pathways, as many known, entities that were sponsoring parkour, or companies that were invested in parkour, or even just athletes that had achieved that success themselves. And so, staying really like positive and driven around that, I think was, again, credit to those earlier lessons that I learned during those formative years.
You mentioned self-acceptance, and that sort of sparked a little thing in my head. I remember when I first went into professional NRL, I was like 17, 18, I was super young, and I went into a team environment where there was all these guys that I looked up to since I was like 5, 10 years old.
All your idols.
All my idols. I was at the Bronx.
Yeah.
And they just won.
Pick up the Bronx, come on.
Come on, boys. And I remember I came into the environment and I didn't say a word because I was so nervous. And I wanted these guys to like me, and I potentially wasn't being myself because I was just like, oh, if I do this, maybe they'll like me, or I won't say anything because if I say the wrong thing, then they might not like me and I might not play, and all of these things. And you kind of, and I've spoken to a heap of guys. We had Paddy Carrigan on the podcast early days. He said the exact same thing. A lot of guys who go into this space, very similar type headspace. But then the interesting part is that when you get a little bit older and you become a little bit more self-assured and accepting of yourself, it was really interesting. It was like a full shift where people started complimenting me on like, they're like, oh, I love your energy, or like, I like the way you are. And I was like, well, they're complimenting on me, who I am, as who I really am, not this fake persona. Yeah. So I'd love to drill a little bit more into like your journey with self-acceptance, because you said that was almost a switch, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I felt very, I would say, lost for a lot of the early years that I can remember in my life, where I was a very annoying, very intense, quite, loud kid. I wasn't necessarily like, angry or violent or dangerous in any sense. I was just a lot. And I feel like because of that, I was quite ostracized socially. And there was a lot of me that was, as you just spoke about, very much trying to do too much to be liked, or do, not enough to be like, trying to stage some sort of extra personality or less person, like to be cool in this situation, to be loud. Like it wasn't a thought out process. I was just over the top. But I found that was a huge obsession of mine all through until the age of 15. And then when I found parkour, and I just wanted to do that. And it was like this, to put it puritanically, it was like my calling.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Yeah,
I just went and did that, and I just did it. It deprioritized what I want, like, because also it's this really awkward thing. It deprioritized what I thought of people's expectations of me. It's like I'm already doing something that people are perceiving as lame anyway, and I've been perceived as annoying my whole life. So fuck what they think. I'm just gonna do what I like doing. And I actually found, really interestingly, that the more I got into just doing parkour and being myself, as you've said, the exact same kind of process, the more you let go of any staging or forced personality, or just obsessing, anxiety, giving yourself too much analysis around the socialization and interaction you're having with others, and focus on what you're there to do first, and then the interaction seems to come a lot more natural, and you're much more well received. I feel like there's 3.5 million people that follow me. That's very good justification for my teenage self, who was like, "You're not accepted." I think you've got enough acceptance, mate. You're fine.
And you kind of just get in like almost like a little bit of a flow. Yeah. And things start coming into your life. You're like, oh, I never expected this to work out. and you're just being yourself.
Yeah. If anything, the more you were yourself, the more success was achieved. And that, I think, the individual journey that you go on with parkour, and that's something we talk about, the younger athletes who became more confident adults, is that's probably why I really want to promote parkour as a whole. Is not just you could do cool front flips off rooftops. It's really this personal journey that you go on that builds you in self-confidence and builds you up in many, many ways that you can then take to life, take to those wider lessons that you are going on through it being, buying an apartment, having a child, all these sorts of things that we do as adults that no one's really mapped out for you. So having mental framework for it, going in and understanding yourself and that self-acceptance will make you more powerful in all of those things.
It seemed like when you were exposed to the environment of parkour, it seems like that kind of helped you and allowed you to come out and flourish and be yourself. If I was a young kid, or even just someone who's in my 20s or 30s or whatever, I'm like, Dom, I'm just trying to find my thing. Like, I'm just like, everyone talks about finding their purpose. You found your thing with parkour. Keeks found his thing with like podcasting and like training and all this. And it's like, how do I find my thing? What would be the advice you would give them?
Okay, well, so the obvious one that I think most people will leap to is like, just give it a go. Yeah. You got to start, give it like a, couple of weeks of trying it. But that doesn't always, really take into account the whole situation, right? How are you just going to go and try something if you don't have the financial stability or the access or the, knowledge of how? So I think what people need to do is, if they're wanting to start a journey, is to look at it for a broad spectrum. So the reason I worked as a garbage man, which is probably the least glorious job that anyone can think of, was so that I had the physical training to help back up my strength and fitness, but also the time of day to then pursue the other craft I would like to do. Yeah. So I think finding, something in a similar space, if you're, wanting to work in media, finding a role in a media department, be that TV, radio, social media, an editor, anything you can with it, a step towards your realm, and then taking it like treating it seriously for a long period of time. And in my mind, a 3 to 5 year window of trying to find success in something is the minimum that you should be applying. If this is really your goal and your dream, and this is the thing that's going to make you happy, is 3 to 5 years of trying in your life really that steep of a cost in the grand scheme? If you're going to, presumably we're going to hope that everyone lives 85 plus, that's barely a percentage of your lifetime. So I think it's worth, within reason and setting it up rationally, trying to be as literally as barely emotionally attached to it as possible. That was hard to say.
We got there.
But like having as little emotional attachment to the situation, trying to be as rational and calculated about it, which is super hard to do. I'm not saying that that's an easy feat for anyone. But that sort of like patience and kind of long overview of things is to me a healthier way to achieve that success, instead of looking for something overnight and then losing that infatuation because it didn't work as soon as you wanted it to.
Man, I think we're constantly in that groove of like wanting things so quickly, right? Oh, it's fucking like it.
I mean, because everything in this life now that is like created and has been created over the last 20 years, technology-wise, food-wise, it was all instant, you know. There's no more going out and hunting for your meal or, you know, gathering all of the different components. It's all just at Woolies.
Yes.
Yeah, like it is insane.
But it's also like anything that's worthwhile is hard to do and takes time. Like I remember when we were in the hot tub at the event, at the Red Bull event, you mentioned like yeah, I was wanting to be a Red Bull athlete for like 5+ years before I could even be on the team.
Yeah.
You know? And so you were striving for that goal, and then you got there, and now you've been with them for 10+ years, and you're part of the family, right?
Yeah.
So it takes time.
It is a huge investment. And like when I say that I wanted to be Red Bull for 5 years, that was like Red Bull was probably a goal for 9 years.
Yeah.
Like when I started in 2007, it was, I guess, always one of the steps, but there was only after a few years where I really locked into that being my goal specifically. So there's like, what I'm saying is it's even longer than 5 years to you know, and I would say got in the eyes of Red Bull in 2014. I didn't start my sponsorship with them until 2017.
Wow.
So there's a lot of time where I was still proving my worth, building a relationship, and doing everything in my power from my end to make myself a valuable asset to the brand. So I was like going to every single event that I could, trying to get to every single competition that I could, posting on social media every single day so that they can see he's making a difference where others maybe aren't. That's like, you need to be, if you're looking at yourself versus all of the peers in your industry, be this in sport, be this in business, be this in whatever you're undertaking, I actually think a healthy framing for it is to think about what you're not doing that day. If you don't do the thing that day, if you don't go out training, if you don't progress your skill, if you don't go to class, if you don't make these business calls, if you don't set these meetings, somebody else is doing it, and somebody else is going to achieve that success because they're working their absolute hardest to do it. If there's only so many slots available in whatever, you know, race that you're partaking in, you need to be working harder than anybody else. And that's really the mentality I like to try and take into everything that I approach, is that if I'm going to be doing it, I'm going to be doing it the most saturated, the most intense, the most enhanced that I can possibly do it. Until I achieve that success. Yeah,
I think it's funny. It's like, it's crazy what can happen when you just work hard and you're a good person.
And you're patient. And you're patient. Yeah.
Like, I think if you boil things down to like those three things, like work hard, good person, and that third one, patience and consistency, it's almost like that grit model, like passion and perseverance over time. It's incredible what you think what you can do.
Yeah. Life's funny like that, because I think when you're starting these journeys and you're at the the starting line, it feels very unattainable, or like, you know, oh, there's such a long road ahead of me. But when you look back, you know, now for me it's been 17 coming to 18 years of doing parkour. It feels so brief. It feels like such it's all a syncopated, consistent journey that all makes sense. And it's like, oh, of course it was going to go that way. Where else would it have gone? But it just, you know, when you're starting these journeys, and I think for anyone that is pursuing a journey, you just need to be ready to roll with the punches. And I think the best piece of advice I was ever given early days is, if ever there is a wave created, say you are able to make some financial gain in your business, or you are getting some numbers online with social media, or, you know, you glean some sort of success in your competitive field, that is the time to, surfing metaphors, to ride the wave. What you want to do is stay on that board now as long as possible, hit the barrel, keep it going all the way to the shoreline, past the shoreline, right on the sand. Just, you know, now you got a sand wave going. You know, this is like, you just want to continue, you know, putting your foot on the gas at those. If something happens, that's the time to double down and advance that and really press that skill if you want to achieve, as opposed to doing something sporadically every now and then. Is the moment you see that success, capitalize.
Yeah, you've had a lot of success in your career. How would you define success now versus success back as a 18, 20-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because I guess I never really had a solid view of what success looked like to me. My goal was to somehow get paid to do the sport, and if I could jump on walls with my friends every day for the rest of my life, I would have achieved that success.
Yeah.
But then I achieved that success, and I was like, you know what would be nice? If I could save money for an apartment, or like I spent such a long time traveling around, not earning very much money, and just taking in every opportunity, be it, free flights here, free accommodation here.
Yeah.
Really, really not earning a lot, to be very frank about it. But over the last few years, as I've gotten to in my 30s and I've got a fiance and a puppy, I have now started to kind of shift to wanting to use that platform to not only create financial stability for myself, but also opportunity for other athletes. So work that I'm doing or shoots that I'm able to access and provide or produce, bringing in other members of the community and people around me to also help achieve success in their industries, be that in, film or television, or in their competitive market, or what it is. And that's something I feel like in parkour, I was helped out by so many athletes along the way, and there was so many opportunities that were provided for me on the sense of that, it was available, I was right there, right time, hardworking, but also these athletes were willing to make that extension. I feel like that's what I try to embellish in my, older years in my career, is that I'm also providing that support, time, pathway, whatever it is I can for these younger athletes who want to achieve success in parkour specifically, but also in other careers and sports. I'm currently working with a skydiver who wants to figure out how to disperse and land on his rolls better. So we're doing some courses together just to kind of enhance that skill. So it's translatable across the board.
Yeah, man, that's so left field.
I guess the overarching point is that I very much was supported and enjoy the process of supporting others now throughout whatever their journey is, be it within parkour or something else.
Well, I think that feeling of helping other people is it's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole, you've been given so much success from others helping you. So it's well, why not return the favor? And you know what? Probably it will come back to it at some stage as well. Not that you look at it in that sense.
But the old saying is a rising tide floats all boats, right?
Yeah.
So the more that everyone around us, we can all be rising up together in our success and whatever we deem that to be, we can then use that to create a bigger tide for the entire sport or the entire community or the entire, local area that you're working in. It doesn't necessarily have to be within your sport niche. I try to, when we're talking about everything today, try and bring it back to it doesn't have to just be about within your bubble. I think these are lessons that can be taken, or mental practices that can be taken to every situation.
Yeah, and to be honest, mate, that's why I love having these conversations. They're very expanding, and I get the front seat and I get to ask all the questions. Which is fun.
You get to really absorb it first person.
For 100%, mate. You've done some really gnarly projects over the years. You were showing me the Instagram, over the falls of your most viewed, the most viewed clip on Instagram, where you smacked your face, and I was looking at that, I was like, that's so just gnarly that you just walked away from that. But you've done some incredible projects. Out of the 17 years, what's been a highlight? What was the big project that you're that was just so memorable?
It's really interesting with parkour because I feel like there isn't just one standout memory.
Yeah.
There isn't just one project that I did that was career defining. I feel like for me, especially because it's been such a long career, and it's been so diverse in, years that I was focusing on being, more flow and trick based, or focusing on competition, or focusing on social media. It's been an ever changing different hurdles of success. But I think really, if I think about when I reflect on things and the contentness that I feel, is that I have been able to climb the mountain that I wanted to climb within the sport. One of the big things I always goaled for was a front flip from 10 meters onto ground.
Yeah.
And in 2024, I achieved that last year. So those moments are like big check marks. And there was, a front flip down a big staircase. There was a flip landing on a pole over water, and, flip landing over a big gap, an iconic gap in London. But really it's the culmination of each year of training that I reflect upon and look back, and that helps me feel like the success is there. That's I was doing monthly recaps of my sport and analyzing myself and my performance over those months, and then also doing a year one and reflecting on that and trying to each year take away all of those little positive beats and really try and see it as this constantly progressing big building picture.
Is that you writing them out yourself, like journaling them, or are you putting it out to
they're
camera?
They're all videos. Very much for the first, I would say, 4 to 5 years of my professional career. It was really very highly focused on the jumping part. Everyone was always saying the classic social media thing, show more of your personality, show more of your face. Yeah. I just didn't care to. Yeah. I mean, the thing I was trying to promote was the sport. But as I've gotten older and older, the idea and what I'm trying to promote has changed. And so in that sense, then your definition of success also changes, and the way you perceive yourself, or what, your role in all of the sport, the community, the goal, the direction that you're taking is changes. You can't remain the same, and being accepting of that and adapting to those situations is tricky, but also at the same time necessary.
If you could just have no ceiling on what is possible in terms of like logistics or geography or anything in terms of a project, is there something that you would froth to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a project I've been talking about with a production company I worked with Red Bull in the past, but we want to build drone platforms and then have me do parkour across different drone apparatus at like 20 stories in the air. That's like still for me one of the biggest goals that I have. Wow. Like, I think it's taking the idea of tech in this modern society we live in, but also taking the idea of this mental fortitude and this fear. I don't think I would be doing the world's hardest tricks that I've ever done at this height or on these platforms. The idea is that having the mental fortitude, skill and understanding to operate in this extreme circumstance where by all rights your mind should be shutting down. That's kind of what I would like to explore, and then be able to kind of dissect the journey I've gone on mentally, and how I dealt with those really extreme situations, because that's nowadays the only real way to frighten me is to put me on a very exposed platform that I have to rely on not just myself but the technology as well. I've done so much risk. What's the opposite of risk aversion? Risk immersion.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm risk immersion. So I'm so used to being in risky situations. So I do find it difficult now to, I guess, relate to fear in a mainstream sense, because I don't have such a different relationship with it. So to do that, I think I'd have to push myself mentally. I'd also like to go out into nature more and do more parkour in beautiful, like, natural locations that weren't designed for parkour, but I think we see it in urban spaces so much, and especially in Australia, we have so much beautiful landscape and unique like cliffs, different ravines, creeks. The bush here is so different. I think I'd love to spend more time once I get my license at the end of the year. Yeah. Because I'm a 33-year-old man without a license.
I still couldn't believe that, man.
Yeah, but what I think that's something that I'm looking to explore more, is to do more parkour in nature.
Man, I think all that is so beautiful. I remember when I asked you a question like what like, what scares, like, or what wouldn't you do? And you're like, oh, I haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
At the Red Bull Summit, I was like, man, I'm scared of so many things. But I think then to be honest, that was probably a big part of the conversation coming in today, was that ability to overcome fear, like that ability to be able to break down all the little things and control what you can control, and then slowly move the pole. That was probably one of my favorite things of this conversation, man. I think it was awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think it's actually something I've become more aware of since being with my partner, because she is a lot more risk averse, and she's someone who does analyze things way more before approaching the problem. And so seeing our contrasting mindsets and seeing that I am very like happy-go-lucky and willing to, like, you know, all on red with pretty much everything that I do. It's nice to see that contrast and see that both do work, and both have their value, and both have their merit. Just because I am fearless or have less fear than most people doesn't necessarily mean that that's only positive and that makes me better or more super in any way. That's just a style of thought and a style of attacking things. I actually think that there is so much value to everyone's different strengths in the way that they approach problems. Just because I approach situations by kind of almost not absorbing them, I'm not saying that would be advice for every single person. I think that what really we should be taking away with the overcoming is finding your personal version of success, growth, and maturity in your emotions. I think that's the way forwards. As I said earlier, there's no one right answer to any of this. And so it is a personal thing, and it does take, I guess, reflection. And if you can have some sort of catalyst or drive or passion like you had with rugby and now with content, it makes it easier to go through life lessons, because you're working on something as like an A plot, and then you can use your emotions and your understanding of yourself as that like B plot in a way. You know, not that it should be second priority, but it's like they're running parallel to each other.
That fluidness and flexibility, I think, is really beautiful. You mentioned content. It's something that we probably didn't talk about today.
Not at all, probably.
which is actually, I kind of love that, to be honest.
Well, I have a question for you. I mean, coming from an athlete side of life, were you, and now moving into this space, was it an interest to, I guess, for you, be an influencer? Or, like, you know, did you have any aspiration of being a, you know, content creator, video producer? Or was this a way more for you to express your sport and thoughts in a deeper way? Was it like more sporty driven or more content driven?
To be honest, mate, like when I was playing footy, I was always the guy that pushed the media off to the side. Like, they're like, and I was like, no, I talk to old mate. Like I always pushed it away. Even having like social media back in the day, me and my best mate were at the Gold Coast at the time, and we always just had our social media. We never liked it, but we're like, oh, one day it'll be good for a business if we ever launched it. Like, and that was the whole play.
Future planning, but very loosely. Like,
and we didn't pay any attention to it. And to be honest, when I finished up footy, I was 24, like typically a bit young, had a heap of head knocks. It was, to be honest, the only reason why this thing started was because like I was curious about mental health, and I wanted to have the tools to be able to help friends and family. So I went back to uni, started studying psychology, and then I thought, well, how do we promote like these thoughts, these themes, these tools and strategies? And I was like, well, athletes are so like influential in community. I was like, imagine if we could just have conversations with them. And I think I was fortunate enough that I have a lot of really good friends in this space, in the Olympic space and NRL. And I was like, that'd be probably more likely to have a conversation with me rather than just like a journalist, to be honest. And to be honest, man, it came from just like a really like wholesome, nice space where we could promote those conversations. And to be honest,
I love that. It's not even, it was neither A or B of my question. C came from mental health side. And I think that's something that, especially in today's more volatile landscape where I feel like people are being judged or harangued for having different points of view, I think being assured of yourself and knowing, you know, like whatever your experience is in that, being sure of yourself and understanding that your intent is to be a good person and that your goals and desires are deserved and that you should achieve those things is really the basic way we go about it.
I think we've talked about like we overcomplicate it so much.
Yeah.
Man. Like fuck, we overcomplicate it so much, and then the amplification of that is just like when we like collaborate with the athlete on socials, like the other people get to like their audience get to see the message that we're trying to promote, and it's the whole thing. So when I think of, because I really battled with that like amplification, commercializing the podcast, because I'm like, oh well, it's not supposed to be that. It's just supposed to be a good thing. And then when someone explained to me like, yeah, but if you bring this amplification in and if you like have more people like paying you to come on and ads, then you can reach more people, and then you can and then once that penny dropped, I was like, I get it. Yeah. I understand it. And I was just like, okay, well, how do we grow this thing? And,
yeah. Well, it sounds like even there where you said it's a good thing. It's if you're starting from a base of having this thing that you feel strongly about, passionate about, and is like a good thing, then promoting it more doesn't feel so selfish. It can feel more selfless because you are, you know, and that's when you actually asked me this at the Rebel Summit. You asked, how have you maintained that love with the sport? And I think one of the ways was, and now I've completely mind blanked.
How you fell in love with the sport?
Just like staying in love with the sport is having like this very healthy kind of enjoyment factor in the sport, as opposed to necessarily like putting all these specifications on what you need to achieve.
But how did you go battling the being an athlete versus being a content creator? Because you've got 3.5 million followers on social media now. You know, you've got an incredible subscriber base on YouTube. How did you go about, because I know you're very much athlete performance project driven. How did you balance between wanting to be a really good athlete and then also being, I guess, like a content creator and creating content?
I think the way I saw it was that the content was an extension of the sport. Parkour was very lucky. It's always been a very visual medium. We were filming videos of ourselves since we basically started doing the sport, and that's the way that we share our sport. It started in the modern era of the internet, where you could upload videos, even if they're originally, you know, really bad file types, 240p. That was our way of translating through the sport. So instead of attaching the expectation around the result of that media, I put my expectation into my athletic performance, and also again, it always comes down to the fun we had making the project. I wanted to enjoy the experience of being out there and producing a video with my friends, or going out and exploring new challenges, like that, that process, and focusing on enjoying that, regardless of what the full result was of the individual project. Knowing that if I got 3 views on this video, but then I got 1,000 on another video, I didn't have to expect more on the next video. It's that all of these projects will eventually be my body of work, working towards this goal. Right. And if I'm having fun every step of the way, then it's a way easier way to, and just documenting what I'm doing, it's a way easier way to continue being in love with both the sport and the content at the same time, because you're operating purely, your intentionality is coming from a place of enjoyment. Be nice, have fun is really like, there's not much more to it. I just don't think like, you know, you can put all these other labels and stuff on it, but really at the end of the day, you know, with whatever you're doing, it doesn't even have to be with hard work. If you're out at the beach, be nice, have fun. If you're walking the dog, be nice, have fun. Crossing the road, be nice, have fun. It's really like, it's just keep everything simple and in that vein. Mate, I love that. Before we wrap things up, there is one little I guess I want to, maybe I'll call it a segment that I've never actually done before. I'd love to get your rosebud thorn of the time of life at the moment. So I stole this from Sarah from Red Bull. So a rose is like something that's really great that's happening in life. Bud is something that you're kind of interested in, looking to explore, and then thorn, something that's really challenging. We caught up for coffee, me and Sarah, like a little while ago, and she's like, "Oh, I really love this," and so we've actually started doing it in our solo episodes. And we've just started doing it. So right now, in your period of life, rose, bud, thorn, what are you thinking? Okay, we'll start with rose. I think I'm currently exploring buying an apartment with getting a mortgage on an apartment with my fiance. and just kind of taking those next life steps together, preparing for the future. Those sorts of things are, in a really good space. And I think something that personally is taking up a lot of my thought, priority, and intention. Like I'm just having the best time.
Cool.
And because I'm not traveling as much due to my ankle surgery right now, it's all blossoming
Yeah.
like a berries, like for the metaphor. And then Bud, what am I? Well, this sounds absolutely. Actually, no. Okay, I was going to say like getting back into parkour, but that one's too obvious. That is just what I do with my life. So I think that's going to happen regardless. I started kickboxing 12 months ago.
Interesting.
With a group called EHV Kickboxing, and I've been really enjoying that, and would like to probably do some sort of like bout or match in the next 12 months with kickboxing.
Really, bro?
Yeah.
And that would be so cool to see.
It'd be cool to do some like sort of create a bout and really like, maybe do something for charity with it and make a big song and dance of it. But really, it would just be cool to do a fight as well.
Talk about like therapy through movement.
Yeah,
That's sick.
And interestingly enough, I did not get into kickboxing through like vice or a necessity. My friends that I grew up doing parkour with were all doing it.
Yeah.
So I just joined in with them, and then have fallen in love with it in a really like, normal sense. Like I just started going, and now that's something I really want to do with my time. Sure. And the instructor J Red is, again, just a great community leader.
Cool.
And I think when you meet someone like that just really like embellishes everyone and brings everybody up in the space and makes you feel empowered, then it gives you way more attachment to the whole thing.
Gotcha. Thorn.
Thorn. I just don't see life in thorns.
Oh, I kind of like that, man.
I like,
It's like if we're searching for thorns, we're doing pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure there's all sorts of things that I have going on that are like, this is terrible, whatever.
Yeah.
I really, and again, this is why I've been able to maintain such a positive mindset around most things. Is I just only see like the wins and I don't really see the losses. Yeah. Actually, I have so there's these twin brothers that are very good in parkour, Brody and Dylan Pawson. And I was talking about my interactions with them recently. I was like, I beat you at this street competition, and there was this one day of training where like I could do this challenge that you couldn't do. And he's like, is that all you like remember is all the time you were like better than us? And I was like, yeah, of course, because you guys are better than me all the time. So like the one time I was, it sticks. Like I really attach myself to these positive affirmations along the way. And I think so I probably can't think of a thorn because of that. Like, okay, I've got one. I am tired because I had a big 4 days.
Bro, big couple of days for our mate.
He's got a thorn.
Dom, man, thank you. Thanks so much for your time, man. I'm so pumped that we got to connect at the Red Bull Fitness Summit. I'm glad that we snuck in for a little podcast and grateful for your time, man. I know that you've had a big couple of days. So appreciative of you, bro. So thanks so much, man.
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. I feel like, we instantly hit like a very good rapport and bond, and I was like, hey, can't wait to speak to him more.
That's my guy.
All right, let's do
Cheers, brother.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Keegan & Company, where it was all around the company we keep. This episode was powered by Famous Nutrition. Head to famousnutrition.com and use TRY30 for 30% off to feel famously good today. See you next time.